Have you ever watched an analyst construct a trade proposal so financially catastrophic, so fundamentally disconnected from a mathematical reality of the National Football League salary cap architecture, that you genuinely wonder whether they had ever read a single page of the collective bargaining agreement in their entire professional career? Because what just landed on our dissection table regarding the San Francisco 49ers and New York Giants defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence is not a trade rumor. It is a masterclass in executive malpractice disguised as bold, aggressive roster construction, and our war room is about to perform the most unforgiving forensic audit this platform has ever witnessed. The doors are sealed. The salary cap ledgers are illuminated across every monitor. The draft capital spreadsheets are running at maximum analytical capacity. And we are about to expose with surgical, uncompromising precision exactly why this proposed transaction would not just fail to improve the San Francisco 49ers, it would financially paralyze one of the most carefully constructed championship rosters in the entire league for the next 3 consecutive seasons. Let us begin by establishing the absolute, unfiltered corporate reality of the primary asset San Francisco is allegedly sending outward in this proposed exchange. Brandon Aiyuk. The relationship between Aiyuk and the 49ers front office has deteriorated into something that transcends normal contract disputes and enters the territory of a genuine organizational crisis with salary cap consequences that cannot be minimized or softened for sake of narrative convenience. After signing a lucrative extension in 2024, the situation collapsed following his devastating ACL and MCL injuries. The front office has already voided his 2026 guaranteed money, a move that communicates with absolute clarity the organization's assessment of both his physical status and his long-term value to the franchise. He is not a player being shopped from a position of strength. He is a highly distressed corporate asset carrying a massive salary cap obligation and an uncertain medical trajectory. The logic embedded in this trade rumor demands that we examine it from a New York Giants perspective with the cold, unsparing eye of a corporate auditor rather than the emotional lens of a fan desperate for roster movement. Why would a coaching staff attempt to construct a disciplined, gritty organizational culture around their franchise quarterback Jackson Dart willingly absorb a massive, distressed salary cap commitment for a wide receiver emerging from catastrophic knee reconstruction surgery? The answer, when examined through any framework of rational organizational behavior, is that they would not. Aiyuk is not functioning as a sweetener in this transaction that makes the overall package more attractive to New York. He is functioning as a financial anchor that actively makes the entire proposal less attractive, a toxic asset that the receiving franchise would need significant additional compensation just to consider absorbing onto their own cap ledger. The fundamental dynamic of this transaction is precisely backwards from what the mainstream rumor mill is presenting. Huge trade rumor just shocked the football world +2. Now we must redirect our analytical precision toward the incoming asset, because Dexter Lawrence deserves an honest, comprehensive evaluation that separates his genuine on-field value from the financial catastrophe his acquisition would trigger inside Santa Clara's war room. Lawrence is an undeniable force of nature operating in the interior of the defensive line, a player whose athletic gifts and technical sophistication have made him one of the most disruptive interior defenders in the entire National Football League across the peak years of his career. Even in a statistically compressed recent season where his sack totals declined, his underlying pressure generation grades and his ability to consume double-team blocking assignments that free outside rushers continue to reflect elite-tier production. The football player is genuinely remarkable. But our war room does not evaluate players in a vacuum. We evaluate players within the specific geometric, financial, and roster construction reality of the San Francisco 49ers as they currently exist, and that reality makes this acquisition not just inadvisable, but structurally impossible without causing catastrophic damage to the organization's competitive infrastructure. General Manager John Lynch has already committed substantial resources to fortifying the defensive interior. The trade sending a 2026 third-round pick to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for Osa Odighizuwa was a calculated, precisely targeted acquisition designed to address a specific gap in the defensive rotation. 2 additional selections were invested in defensive tackles Alfred Collins and C.J. West in the prior draft cycle. Nick Bosa and Mykel Williams anchor the edges with contracts that already consume an enormous portion of the available salary cap. Huge trade rumor just shock the football world +1. You do not surrender a 2026 second-round pick and a fourth-round selection to acquire an interior lineman who is departing his current franchise specifically because contract extension negotiations have collapsed when you have literally just traded away premium draft capital to acquire his exact positional equivalent. The positional redundancy embedded in this proposal is not a minor inefficiency. It is a fundamental strategic contradiction that reveals a complete absence of roster construction logic driving the entire rumor. You cannot simultaneously argue that Osa Odighizuwa was a necessary and justified acquisition, and that Dexter Lawrence represents a complementary, additive investment at the same position. One of those arguments necessarily destroys the other. Why NFL teams can't trade for whoever they want +1. And this leads us directly to the dimension of this transaction that transforms it from merely inadvisable into genuinely catastrophic. The financial impossible geometry created by Lawrence's contract demands. Lawrence is not available on the trade market because the New York Giants have suddenly discovered a surplus of defensive tackle talent that makes him redundant within their system. He is available because contract extension negotiations between his representation and the Giants front office have reached an impasse, which means his asking price for a new long-term commitment is operating at a level that one of the most financially flexible franchises in the league has determined is not worth paying. Huge trade rumor just shocked the football world +1. When you trade for a player whose departure from his original franchise is driven by contract dispute rather than scheme fit or organizational philosophy, you're not acquiring a discounted asset at below market value. You are inheriting the obligation to resolve that same contract dispute on his terms, because the player arrives with full knowledge that your franchise has already surrendered premium draft capital to acquire him, dramatically shifting the negotiating leverage in his direction the moment he crosses through facility doors in Santa Clara. The 49ers would not be acquiring Dexter Lawrence, the football player. They would be acquiring Dexter Lawrence, the contract negotiation hostage situation, with a predetermined outcome that requires him to pay elite, market-setting money for an interior defensive tackle entering his 8th professional season. Huge trade rumor just shocked the football world +2. The salary cap mathematics of this scenario are not merely challenging. They are prohibitive to the point of organizational paralysis. The San Francisco 49ers are currently navigating one of the most complex and consequential financial periods in the franchise's recent history. The Brock Purdy extension represents a seismic financial event that will fundamentally reshape every cap calculation the organization makes for the next half-decade. Nick Bosa's contract already represents a historic commitment to a defensive player that consumes a massive portion of the available payroll. Fred Warner, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, and the foundational core of the roster all carry significant cap obligations that must be managed with extraordinary discipline and precision. The cap isn't real. How NFL teams actually create cap space +2. Adding a Dexter Lawrence extension to this existing financial architecture does not just create pressure. It creates the kind of suffocating, multi-year cap constraint that forces front offices to release productive veterans, decline to re-sign key contributors, and watch helplessly as the supporting cast that makes championship rosters functional erodes through financial attrition. The ripple effects extend far beyond the Lawrence contract itself. Every dollar committed to a defensive tackle demanding top-of-market compensation is a dollar unavailable for the wide receiver depth that Shanahan's offense requires, the offensive line reinforcement that protects Purdy, and the edge rusher rotation that generates the quarterback pressure the defense desperately needs to recapture after the catastrophic sack total of the 2025 season. The cap isn't real. How NFL teams actually create cap space +2. The web search sources illuminating our analysis today reveals something that the mainstream rumor mill consistently fails to incorporate into its trade proposals. The NFL salary cap, while genuinely complex and manipulable through restructures, void years, and signing bonus mechanics, is ultimately a system built around timing and leverage rather than infinite elasticity. More surprising trade rumors break out at combined +1. Teams operating near their cap ceiling can create temporary flexibility through various accounting mechanisms, but those mechanisms carry costs that manifest in future seasons with compounding severity. Every restructure that converts base salary into signing bonus provides immediate relief while borrowing against future flexibility. And a franchise already managing multiple large restructured contracts faces diminishing returns on each subsequent manipulation. The cap isn't real. How NFL teams actually create cap space plus one. The front offices that sustain championship competitiveness across multiple seasons are precisely the ones that resist the seductive temptation of the high-profile, name recognition acquisition that generates immediate media enthusiasm while quietly detonating a financial time bomb with a multi-year fuse. The Los Angeles Rams executed their all-in championship strategy with brilliant precision, surrounded by specific financial circumstances and organizational philosophies that made their approach rational within their particular context. Attempting to replicate that model without the same structural advantages at a different moment in the salary cap cycle, with different contractual obligations already on the books, is not aggressive championship thinking. It is a misapplication of a successful strategy to an incompatible organizational situation. NFL economics. Why teams restructure contracts. Salary cap strategy explained analytics with ASA. If John Lynch is going to part with a 2026 second-round draft pick that this proposal would consume, that asset must be deployed to acquire what a franchise in San Francisco's specific financial position needs most urgently: cheap, controllable, rookie-scale talent operating under 4-year cost-control contracts that allow the team to maintain competitive depth around its expensive veteran core without triggering the cascading cap consequences that accompany every additional high dollar. Commitment. A second-round pick deployed intelligently in this draft class can generate 4 years of productive contribution at a fraction of the cost that Dexter Lawrence's extension would demand in year one alone. The opportunity cost calculation is not remotely close. Why NFL teams can't trade for whoever they want plus one. The blueprints have been examined from every angle. The financial architecture has been stress-tested against every optimistic scenario, and the verdict from our war room is delivered with complete, uncompromising clarity. Trading for Dexter Lawrence would generate an extraordinarily flashy headline for approximately 72 hours before the financial consequences began manifesting across the roster in ways that will haunt the franchise's competitive viability for 3 consecutive seasons. The math does not bend to accommodate famous names and all-pro credentials when the underlying financial structure cannot support the weight of the commitment required to complete the transaction responsibly. Detonate that like button right now to force the algorithm to deliver this level of financially literate, capital-aware analysis to every member of the Niner Empire who deserves better than rumor mill fantasy economics dressed up as bold executive thinking. Lock in your subscription immediately, because every transaction wire movement, every contract negotiation development, and every calculated front office maneuver will be audited with this precision as we accelerate toward the most consequential roster decisions of the championship window. Drop your executive verdict in the comments below. Does a defensive interior need this kind of investment? Or does trusting the Odighizuwa acquisition and the young draft capital represent the disciplined, sustainable path toward February football in Santa Clara?